Pronounce the reading this morning taken from the book of Luke, chapter 2, verses 8 to 11. Now there were, in the same country, shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. Then the angel said to them, Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. You may be seated.
This time of year, it seems to me, maybe to you, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, where people are more aware of others. Think about radiothons, you think about angel trees, think about Toys for Tots, think about the bell ringers at the entrance of the store, if any loose change, put it in. Think about the day after Cyber Monday, which is to give back to nonprofits and people that are trying to meet the needs of whatever individuals that they can. There's just such a heavy emphasis, whether churches and businesses and communities. We as a congregation, we brought in toys and items and clothes for the New Heights Christian Community Center and for people, for families here in our backyard, West Nashville. We also did joy boxes for children there in Haiti. And so we as a church also took part in this. And to me, it's like Galatians 6:10 that's sprinkled around us. You know, for us to do good to all, have opportunity to do good to all. And the rest of the verse goes, especially for the household of faith. You know, it wasn't always like this. In 1849, about maybe 10 years prior to the Civil War, there was a lot of conflict at that particular time. There was a minister in Massachusetts that really struggled with the debate of slavery and the issues with that. He also struggled with the poverty that he saw that was just seemed overwhelming to him, and he really bothered him, and it was hard for him to lift up his spirit above the depressing scene that was around him. And so Edmund Sears, at the age of 39, he graduated from York College in New York City. He also went to Harvard Divinity School. He was an individual that felt compelled, that obviously believing that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that foundation that we also believed. He also understood that it's our mission as God's people to go out and to meet the needs of others, to be the hands, to be the feet of Jesus. And he really stressed that, and he tried as much as he could each day to understand what Jesus says, to the least of these you also did for me, to understand the importance of that mission. And Edmund Sears really struggled with writing a message, a sermon. He had a writer's block. And his writer's block was because of just the sinful world that we live in. The writer's block was attributed to the work that was out there that was so abundant for people to do, to reach others, to meet the needs of others. He just couldn't put anything down on paper. So he got his Bible, his worn out Bible, and he started thumbing through it. And he came and landed at Luke chapter 2, as was read from us by Roger. You reread that, and like many of you, we could read something, but based on where we're at that particular time, based on our age, based on our experiences, based on what's going on in current events, that we could reread something and maybe see it in a more deeper light. And that was Edmund. He was moved again by the story that was told to us about Jesus and how he came to this earth and the way that he came to this earth. And after he read that, he was inspired to write down a poem, and the poem he called "It Came Upon a Midnight Clear." You know, when you think about that particular poem, like anything, it travels throughout history. As Edmund believed through this message, as he presented that message the next day, you know, obviously we know this song as we sung it together as a pleasant, as a classic carol. But to the people that Edmund presented this poem for the very first time, they didn't see it that way. They saw it as a deep and dire need for us to go into the sinful world and to meet the needs of others. They were pressed upon to go and to be the hands and to the feet of Jesus Christ to the world. A burden that, again, as he was moved by. As you find and see that Edmund, after he delivered this sermon, that it wasn't long as that this was picked up, as he printed it as being an editor in the Christian Register on December the 29th, 1849, that there was a man by the name of Richard Willis. And Richard Willis was a music editor, and he came across this poem, and he had written an old tune. And he saw this poem, and he married it together with this tune. And in 1850, this carol was first published. The first title of it was "While the Shepherds Were Watching the Flock at Night." That was the very first title of this carol that we sung. And it was like that for 10 years until it was changed to what we know it as today. It came upon a midnight clear. So what you think about as you look at this, to me what I find interesting is how soldiers gravitated toward this song when it came to hard times in our country. In World War I, it was soldiers singing this song, this hymn on Christmas Day as they were in the theater of France and trying to do their job in ministry. It was also 25 years later in World War II that also soldiers were singing this carol to lift up their spirits in their hard times and what they were going through. You know the reason why that they gravitated towards that is because they could not think of anything that's more appropriately written than what Edmund Sears wrote about peace on earth, goodwill and tidings for all. What an important emphasis and story. If you go and look, it's on number 338 in our hymnal. You'll notice in verse 3, notice what Edmund wrote. He says, "Yet with woes of sin and strife the world has suffered long." On the surface we think, oh, it's just a nice sweet carol, it's about innocence. No, if you look deeper, it's about a deeper issue. It's about our needs. It's about the strife that we have and how we've been separated from God because of our own sins and the consequences of those sins and the pollution and the poison of sin in the world today. He goes on to write in that third verse, "Beneath the angel's strain have rolled 10,000 years of wrong." It's a long time of wrong and of sin. Yet men at war with men, and you see why the soldiers were pressed upon that. "Hear not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noise, ye men of strife, and hear the angels sing." Get beyond our conflicts, get beyond the separations, get beyond what we have at odds with one another, and just pause and listen to what was sung, and pause and listen to the message that we receive from God. I think that's so important for us to understand that Sears charged for us to heal the world's problems and sin and suffering. And the need to bring peace on earth still applies to us at the end of 2019 as we are pressed upon to bring in a new year, it's still going to be the same issues, the same problems that we have faced this year, that if God sees this in the next year, to still face. Sin still permeates our culture and society, our communities, our towns, even in our churches. And the need for us to have peace on earth through the Prince of Peace as written in that carol. And we understand the importance of what we need to do. As we look at the story and see Edmund Sears in 1849, yes, a lot has changed from 1849 to 2019, but there's still a lot of the things that are the same. The problem of poverty still is a problem today. The problem of people that are in sinful lives and sinful situations is still an issue. The need still is there for us to be ministers, and reaching out and serving others is still there today. So I think of a hymn and a poem and a carol that's been around for some time, but still the message applies to us. It's much more than beyond the beginnings of our earthly life of Jesus. It's much more than that. It goes beyond to the problem of sin and the need for salvation. And for us to understand the greatest message and the greatest gift that's ever been given to us through the life of Jesus Christ, which brings us to our second point, the charge. I think it's wonderful to see so many groups of people, businesses, communities, our congregation and our other congregations doing things outside of ourselves, not only for one another, but to meet the needs of other people, whatever category it may be. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. But I also understand this: if God permits us, if it's God's will to see us through this next year to next December, guess what? There'll still be people. There'll still be people needing food. There'll still be people needing the basic necessities of clothing. There'll still be people that are hurting in their hearts because of what has happened to them, or maybe what they have chosen. There'll still be people in need of a Savior. So the efforts that we have done this year and others have done hasn't eliminated, hasn't solved, hasn't fixed these things. Does that mean that what we're doing is pointless? No, it doesn't mean that at all. I think as Edmund was pressed upon, we should be pressed upon ourselves in our own spirit. What Jesus says, to the least of these you also have done to me. It's deep in Matthew chapter 25. And I want to read some of Matthew 25. It's the scene, the setting of what is judgment. It's a foreshadowing of judgment and what will take place, and how the judge will separate us. It has everything to do with benevolence. It has everything to do with being a good neighbor. It has everything to do with loving our neighbor, loving each other as ourselves. In Matthew chapter 25, and beginning in verse 34, it says, "And the king will say to those on his right hand, 'Come, you are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, saying, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked or clothe you?' Or when did we see you sick or in prison or come to you? And the king will answer and say to them, surely I say unto you, as much as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it. Let me ask you something. I'm reading from the New King James. Can you find a translation to where Jesus says, you solve hunger? You clothe everyone who has lacking clothes. You have fixed sickness and cured it. Does it say that? Does it say anything about that we fixed a problem? Does it say anything that Jesus is saying that we somehow cure the ills of sickness in the world? That we've provided shelter for everyone that is a stranger? Yet we think that. We think, well, what's the point of me doing something? What's the point of me reaching and touching someone when it's going to be more issues, more problems? It's just bigger than what we can do. You got to go back to Matthew 25 as Edmund Sears was pressed upon Matthew 25. He understood, I'm not called to solve. I'm not called to solve these issues. I am called to do something. I am called by God to meet a need. The things that Jesus says that every one of us is capable and able to do. Does that mean we fixed it? Does that mean that we solved it? Does that mean that person who's hungry, that we gave them something to eat, that they'll never be hungry again? The person that's lacking clothing, that we give clothing, that they'll never lack clothing again? That the person who we go visit that's sick, that they'll never be sick again? No, it doesn't mean that. We need to understand that Jesus is not asking us in a time where people are doing good and meeting needs and thinking of others, and as we have opportunity doing good to all, but those problems are still going to be there. That those needs are still going to be there. If God still permits, even beyond our lifetime, they will still be there. That hasn't changed. The technology, the advancement of our culture and our country hasn't changed those fundamental things. There'll still be people in need, and as overwhelming as it is, as it seems sometimes it's just too much, Lord. There's too many people that are hurting. How can I possibly make a difference? How can I possibly spread the good news to those that there's just so much out there? Why should I even bother doing something about it? And then I go back to Matthew 25 and understand I'm not called to fix it. He's not going to judge me based on solving all these things. He will judge me based on me doing something and meeting the need. When I think of Christing carols, when I think of this old carol, and how meaningful it was for soldiers wanting peace and strife to end, homesick, wanting to be back to family, but doing their job. Think about us as Christian soldiers in the sense of putting on the armor of God, that we too long for heaven, we too long for complete peace in the world, for everyone to come to know Christ and have a relationship with Him, that we too are homesick, heaven sick, longing to be with God and to dwell with Him, and tired of the pain and tired of the suffering and tired of the dark past that we have and the things that have happened to us and the horrible situations that sometimes people place it in. We want it all to go away, don't we? We gotta look at Christ. And we gotta focus on Him. I'm going to tell you something. There will never be peace. That doesn't mean we need to strive for peace. There will never be peace on our own. It will take the principles. Edmund realized that. He understood that. as we sung the Prince of Peace. We need the Prince of Peace. We need the only one who came into this world, who lived as you and I have lived, who faced the temptations that we faced, who went without, in some cases, to lead up to why he came to live, to die, buried, to be resurrected. The least of these. Jesus commends us for simply being available to others. When I read my text and you read your text, it doesn't say anything about it only in a specific time of the year. It doesn't say you need to do these things to others in December. It's not a seasonal option. And as good as we are to think of others in December, because of the mood, because of just how people are just in a better spirit, it's calling for us in January, in February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, that those months too still need the Spirit within us to think of others, to have goodwill towards others, to want peace, to meet the needs. As for peace, we understand that it comes from Christ. I'm sorry I went ahead of myself. But may we be compelled. May we be compelled as Edmund, as a good example of somebody that just doing what they can do and writing this poem and presenting it to the congregation that he was preaching to. And as they saw it much different as we just sung and as we hear it on the radio, it's much different light. But in the original audience, it was a challenge. It was a challenge. Take what Jesus has done for us and do something because of it. What we do is not to repay, because we can't redo that. What we do is not to somehow say, God, I know I owe you, but I'm now we're even. We do it because of what we just done for us. You want to know something? We work not to be saved. We work because we're saved. There's a difference, isn't it? A big difference. Because we're saved. So I would challenge us this morning. What can I take from this? Number one you could take is this. It's great that we're doing great things in the month of December. It's great that we're thinking of others, praying for others. And it's good that we're doing something, because that's exactly how Jesus in the Great Judgment Day is going to separate the sheep and the goats. Those who did and those who did not. But the challenge is this. What are you going to do January? What are you going to do February? What are you going to do the rest of the calendar year? Will you still possess the same spirit that you have this month? Will you still think of others? Will you still do what you can do for someone else because of what Christ has done for you? That's the greatest challenge. As we have opportunity, it doesn't apply to December only. As we have opportunity, applies to every day of this year and of next year and of every moment that we have in our life. Also, in this select the invitation song, we're going to stand and sing, and we can help assist you. Addressing the number one need. I can't love my neighbor as myself if I haven't addressed myself. I can't be a help to someone else if I haven't addressed my greatest need first. To be converted, to become a Christian, to be a new creature, and to embrace what Christ has done for me and to meet my needs, He did, and to receive that in obedience and submission to what He has said for us to do. Believe, confess, repent, to become a Christian by being baptized. Or maybe there's someone here that has done those things, but you've lost sight. The distractions have taken you away from where you need to be. We can pray for you. We can ask God to bless you and give you wisdom and help give you strength. If that's something publicly you need to do, if it's something privately you can do it in your own home or anywhere you're at, and ask God to refocus and to set your mind on things above. And yes, as good as it may seem, as people are to one another this month, we as the church need to be the light and stand out when it's beyond December, to show that goodwill and tidings for all still applies. If we can help you with these things, please come, as together we all stand.